This is a 4-part series in my journey with HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and we're now calling it menopause hormone therapy. This is part 1, realising that I was in perimenopause. And let's just say I'd never heard the word perimenopause before. I'd heard the word menopause and I associate it with women in their mid-50s, but perimenopause was a whole other level. The early symptoms I noticed, they weren't really dramatic or they didn't seem medical. For example, I noticed a change in my body composition. I started to get a little bit of extra belly fat around my midsection, and granted, I'm a fitness professional and I was teaching classes like all the time. I doubled down and I started doing more cardio and eating less carbohydrates because that used to work before. But in my mid-40s, around the age of 45, this method just wasn't working. That meant that I got more tired and my muscles ached even more. I wasn't recovering, my bones ached, my joints ached, and I just started to feel really demotivated. My sleep was terrible. And I would have multiple nights a week where I'd be up between 2 and 5 a.m, awake, going online, reading, having cups of tea, eating, and so that really didn't help a lot either. When I finally did fall asleep, it was time to wake up and get ready for work, and so I was feeling really exhausted, agitated, angry, frustrated. At this time, at 45, I already knew the power of strength training, but I associated it with the aesthetics of changing your body, like having more muscle would look better. I wasn't really thinking at that point, mid-40s, that I would want to have more lean muscle tissue for my future self, my future health. I didn't understand the implications of that. Around the age of 47, 48, I started to notice gut issues, like my gut would hurt when I ate or drank certain foods that I'd always had, no problem, and my skin flared up. I had a condition, it took me a year to find this out, between 47 and 48, a condition called rosacea, which is like quite highly inflamed skin, like little pimples across the nose and the forehead, and it was incredibly frustrating and I couldn't figure out why. But some of the worst perimenopause symptoms for me were actually to do with my mental health and mood. I'd never had anxiety before, and suddenly I was anxious about driving at night. I was anxious about all kinds of things to do with my kids, and it just felt like everything was a whole lot worse. I got really frustrated with my husband and everything he did. Eating, sleeping, walking, sitting next to me. It was like, just leave me alone. So as I was going through this, I had no one else to talk to. I'd never heard anyone mention that it could be menopause, and I was working in an industry that was quite young. A lot of the staff and the team members were maybe early 30s. So there wasn't really anyone around me that I could have a conversation with and even ask, hey, have you experienced this? And all of these symptoms just didn't seem to be associated with each other. The only combination of symptoms that felt associated was the sleeplessness and then the fatigue. So that makes sense. If you're not sleeping, you're always tired. When I started to realize that it was perimenopause, it was when I went to visit my doctor, and she suggested that a good form of contraception in my mid-40s would be the Mirena IUD. And I remember her saying, this will be good for this next stage of life. But she didn't actually say what the next stage of life was. She didn't use the word menopause or perimenopause. So I just understood that the Mirena IUD would support me as a contraceptive later in life until I didn't need it anymore. I didn't understand that the Mirena IUD is actually the progesterone part of HRT, which you also need if you're going to take HRT. So I had the Mirena IUD inserted. This is the first time I'd had it. I think I was about 45. And I did not relate this to supporting perimenopause symptoms at all. So I still had menopause symptoms after the Mirena IUD because I wasn't taking estrogen, because we weren't talking about that then. It was one night when I was up again in the middle of the night, incredibly frustrated. I remember typing in all the different things that I was experiencing, the shoulder pain, the hip pain, knee pain, sore muscles not recovering, weight gain, anxiety, sleeplessness, loss of libido. I remember all these things. I typed it in and it churned out the result of these are symptoms of perimenopause. And I was like, wait, what? Of course, I started thinking, well, how do I cure perimenopause? Now we know you can't cure it. It's a natural stage of life that women go through. But I did see something called HRT. And that's when I started to investigate it. So to be honest, I found out about HRT through social media and Google, and I heard two sides about HRT. One side was that it's dangerous, and the other side was how much it's helping women. I don't remember my mum ever being on HRT, so I didn't really have anyone to talk to about this. But at the time I was investigating HRT, and now I'm 49, 4 years of perimenopause symptoms, and now I'm starting to think there's got to be something to help. I did find a couple of quite progressive doctors that were based in the UK that were prescribing HRT to support perimenopause symptoms, so I wanted to know more. What I learnt was there was an outdated study called the Women's Health Initiative that was done in 2001 that literally scared women off taking HRT. The study was misreported and went in the headline news, the New York Times, as having an increase to breast cancer, which we now know was completely wrong. We also know that the average age of the woman that they were testing estrogen only on was over the age of 60. And we now know that HRT is best used during perimenopause when you're actually having symptoms of menopause. We know you can continue to take HRT later in life, and right now there isn't a time limit on it, although when I started they said 5 years is the limit, but we don't have proof of that anymore, which is great. We know that the best time to take HRT is during perimenopause, because I was really struggling with perimenopause symptoms despite the fact that I had changed so many lifestyle things as a fitness instructor, as a fitness trainer. I'd changed so much about my lifestyle and I was really fit and healthy but still experiencing perimenopause symptoms. I decided that I would find out more from the experts and go on that journey myself. So I interviewed one of the top doctors in the UK for my podcast Sexy Aging, and her name's Dr. Rebecca Lewis, and she works alongside Dr. Louise Newson, who's also well versed in HRT, and I had an education on HRT.